List verse. List by Angela Sirontenko. July 25, 2017. Top 10 high-profile people suspected of being the Zodiac Killer. One of the most mysterious unsolved crimes in the world is the case of the Zodiac Killer. Although police brought in many suspects after the murders began in the late 1960s, they were never able to definitively identify the culprit. Today, the case remains open. The codes received by the police have not been deciphered yet, which leaves many opportunities for someone else to unmask the Zodiac Killer. Will we ever find out the person responsible for taking so many innocent lives? This list will cover the top 10 profiles people suspect of being the Zodiac Killer. Number 10. Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is the most recent Zodiac Killer suspect. In 2013, many people started to find Ted Cruz fit the description of the Zodiac Killer. They believed that he tried to cover it up by performing certain actions. Around the world, different journalists supposedly uncovered evidence to prove that Cruz was the serial killer. According to a public policy poll, 38% of the voters in Florida thought that Ted Cruz might be the Zodiac Killer. Only 10% were sure that he was, while 28% were not sure. However, one fact completely rules him out. Ted Cruz was born 2 years after the Zodiac killings began. Even so, some people are starting to dig further to refute this new information. These speculators suggest that there was a high chance that Barack Obama's birth certificate was fake and that he was born in Kenya, so why can't Ted Cruz's birth certificate be fake as well? Slowly after that, certain people began to accept the theory. Some Florida residents believe that Donald Trump initiated the accusations, but we will never know. Number 9. Arthur Leigh Allen. It all began October 30th, 1966, when Arthur Allen became the prime suspect in the murder of Cherry Joe Bates. Allen is the number one suspect for being the Zodiac Killer and the only one to be served with search warrants. Police and investigators gathered a lot of evidence that appeared to prove that he was the killer. Allen's former friend, Don Chaney, reported to police that Allen had wanted to call himself Zodiac and kill couples at random. The police made Allen take a handwriting test, but the handwriting did not match what was on the Zodiac letters. Police found a Zodiac watch that Arthur wore and a bloody knife that he claimed to kill chickens with. They also discovered a royal typewriter in Allen's home that was like the one used to type the confession letters in the Bates murder. Later, Michael Magoo, a victim who survived one of the Zodiac Killer's attacks, identified Allen as the killer in another murder. 1 month later, the police found Allen dead on the floor of his home. Neither the Viejo nor San Francisco police ruled him out as a suspect, even though his DNA and fingerprints were not a match in their cases. Detectives in charge were 95% sure Allen was the Zodiac Killer because so much circumstantial evidence pointed to him. Number 8. Richard Kowski. The next person suspected of being the Zodiac Killer is Richard Kowski. There is a lot of reasonable evidence that points in his direction, including the words and phrases from the uncovered ciphers. Kowski worked with the Good Times newspaper, which focused on anti-police, pro-violence counterculture in San Francisco. In January 1969, people started noticing that the Good Times newspaper had published violent text and clues for the next Zodiac crimes. One day, the Zodiac Killer decided to send 3 separate letters to 3 different newspapers, with each letter containing 1/3 of a code. 5 months later, the Good Times newspaper published their own 3-part code. They also occasionally published articles with the headliner, Zodiac Killer, out of nowhere, which was very strange. In 1969, Kowski published his article under Geik, or Geik, to shorten his last name. The same year, the police received the 3rd-part cipher, which clearly had the name Geik on it. The letters started to come again when Kowski went to work at a storefront theater. Detective Ken Narlow kept an eye on Kowski, but Narlow couldn't get an arrest or search warrant because there wasn't enough evidence. Number 7. Lawrence Kane. There isn't much background information on Lawrence Kane, but most of the evidence that appears to prove him guilty came from the deciphered codes of the Zodiac Killer. When people started to decrypt the name that the Zodiac Killer had sent in code form, they came upon Kane. Of course, this led to theories that Lawrence Kane could be the mysterious Zodiac killer. However, that's not all the evidence the police received. They also got information from Pam Huckabee, the sister of the Zodiac victim, Darlene Ferrin. Huckabee claimed that Kane had followed Ferrin for months before the murder. Then a different Zodiac victim identified Lawrence Kane as her abductor. In 1969, when the Zodiac became more violent, doctors diagnosed Kane with massive brain damage from a car accident. His psychologist reported that he had lost all ability to control self-gratification, but the Zodiac was still on the loose. Number 6. Earl Van Best Jr. Out of all the suspects on this list, Earl Van Best Jr. has the closest facial features when compared to the sketch of the Zodiac killer. Gary L. Stewart, Best's biological son, raised the subject with police and claimed that his father was the famous murderer. Stewart wrote the book, The Most Dangerous Animal of All, about his theories. He hoped that he would bring closure to his victims' families. Stewart had gone on a hunt to find as much information as he could about his father's connection to the killer. He started by looking at one of the cryptograms sent by the Zodiac killer to the San Francisco Examiner. Stewart found the words E.V., Best, and Jr. He claimed that this type of coincidence was impossible and made him want to dig even deeper. He also reported that his father's fingerprints matched those found at several crime scenes because both the Zodiac and his father had a diagonal scar. Stewart asked a handwriting expert to compare his father's signature to his marriage certificate to the handwriting found on the Zodiac's letters. According to the experts, there was a match. Stewart is now wanting the DNA test to see if there's another match between his father's DNA and what was found at the crime scenes. Number 5. Theodore Kaczynski. Another person suspected of being the Zodiac killer is Theodore J. Kaczynski, aka the Unabomber. The police started researching Kaczynski when a couple of amateurs told them about the similarities between him and the Zodiac killer. The police did find compelling evidence. Kaczynski had lived in the San Francisco Bay Area from 1967 to 1969, which was the limit that the Zodiac murders occurred in California. They also found his high school yearbook and saw that his signature is similar to the Zodiac's. In addition, Kaczynski and the Zodiac both wrote letters to newspapers, specifically the San Francisco Chronicle. However, there are some differences between the Zodiac and Kaczynski. For example, the witness description of the Zodiac did not match Kaczynski and their writing styles are different. Number 4. Guy Hendricks. There are some wild claims about Guy Hendricks being the Zodiac killer. His daughter, Deborah Perez, was at the press conference when she released some strange information about the famous murderer. Apparently, Hendricks took his daughter with him when he committed the murders. Perez claims that Hendricks told her that the gunshots when he murdered people were just firecrackers. She also told the press conference that she stamped out cryptic letters on the envelopes received by the newspaper. Supposedly, she embroidered the mask worn by the Zodiac, too. Finally, Perez claims that her father had killed 30 to 40 people and apologized on his deathbed for it. Many people started thinking that the murders were all special activity between her and her father. Number 3. Gareth Penn. Author Gareth Penn suspected his professor, Michael O'Hare, was the Zodiac killer. Penn believed that his professor was involved in the murder of Joan Webster. Surprisingly, the focus turned back to Penn and away from O'Hare as a possible Zodiac suspect. Penn was very intelligent and became obsessed with the Zodiac case and the coding behind it. He even shared his thoughts about the radiant theory, which was supposedly used by the Zodiac to show the location of his murders on a map. Some people were shocked that Penn seemed to be able to decipher the Mount Diablo map that was found at the crime scene. Others just think that he was trying to help the police find the killer. Penn is still considered to be one of the prime suspects in the Zodiac killings. Number 2. Bruce Davis. Little background information exists on Bruce Davis, but his long criminal record puts him on the list for top possible suspects. When he moved to California, the police and the FBI kept an eye on him and found that he was guilty of 2 murders. The police asked Davis, but he believed that he shouldn't talk about them if he hadn't been formally charged. Criminal analysts believed that certain events in his life, such as the death of his father, could have caused Davis to become the killer. In the same year that his father died, the Zodiac killer made his first attack. Number 1. Rick Marshall. One day, Rick Marshall invited some fellow ham radio enthusiasts to his home, and they reported that he was strange and had similar qualities to the Zodiac killer. The police found the evidence quite convincing and put him on the list for prime Zodiac suspects. Several pieces of evidence point to Marshall. For example, he lived several miles away from the last known Zodiac murder. He owned a Royal typewriter and a teletype machine that was similar to those used by the Zodiac for his letters. Overall, however, the evidence didn't fit. For example, Marshall's fingerprints didn't match those at the crime scene. Top 10 high-profile people suspected of being the Zodiac killer. List by Angela Sirontenko. Narrated by Jon Wilkins.